Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, folks. How you doing? It's Danny Tisdale, and more importantly, you're listening to the Danny Tisdale Show on Harlem World Radio. I hope you are doing well, or should I say doing well. And as we talk each week, we are I'm in a great position because I get the chance to speak to the leaders, legends, and trailblazers in the world of Harlem, and it's exciting because they are doing incredible work. And, they could be doing a whole panoply of other things, but they do the work that they do because they're in the greatest community in the world. I have a great opportunity to speak to them and hear about the passion and commitment that they have for Harlem. We want you to stay connected with us so that you can stay connected with us on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, you name it. Just put in Harlem World Magazine in the search engine and you can stay connected with us. Or just go to our website at harlemworldmagazine.com and connect with us. And we're still celebrating Women's History Month, and just because it's in the month of March, don't think that we're not celebrating Women's History Month every day of our lives. I was raised by my mother and my sister, and I can't celebrate their work enough. And it gives me a great segue because now I get to celebrate with someone else, and this is Regina Smith, who is a long-serving executive director of the Harlem Business Alliance at 275 Malcolm X Boulevard, number 2. Check them out, support them. She is a fierce advocate for equity in the economic, social, political justice space for black folks, and Regina is on the cutting edge of bringing the cannabis business to Harlem business owners and to Harlem in general. A few days ago, we reposted, I guess you could say, an article, which was really an op-ed by Ms. Smith that was in The Root, titled "Changing the Face of Cannabis Business Ownership, a 6-point plan for black equity." And, of course, that was on the site. How are you doing, Regina?
I'm fine. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Well, and I appreciate you, of course, being on because I think it's extremely important that, as I mentioned to you a little earlier before the conversation, that I really don't know of any other business alliances who are doing the kind of work that you're doing, and it falls right into what we talking about on the show, which is to leaders who are legends and who are kind of trailblazing. And I certainly think that you are, and more importantly, other folks do too. So you don't have to just listen to me. But I was curious, Regina. Who has inspired your work in the community to do the work that you're doing? Has it been family and friends, or is it just who's inspired you?
Well, first and foremost, it was my mother, Maureen Clark. She was a fierce advocate, did a tremendous amount of work here in the community, socialized and advocated alongside with women giants in the community. Enos Francis,
wow.
She worked for Adam Clayton Powell at one point in time. She worked for the New York Urban League. She was a follower of Malcolm X. She was the former chair of Community Board 10, and she was fierce in chairing the board. And so she has been a tremendous inspiration to me. And I'm just attempting to walk in her footsteps.
I hear you completely, and I was a member of Community Board 10, and I have a feeling Community Board 10 has the roots of your mother because it's a passionate, committed board, and if from what you're saying, I can see that. How long have you been executive director of HBA, the Harlem Business Alliance?
I think it's over 14 years now. I mean, time is definitely flying.
Yes, I know. And in those 14 years, it doesn't seem like 14 years. It seems like a hop, skip, and a jump since the time you were executive director. And I wanted to really get into, the article. And I first of all, what prompted you to write the article in the route that we reposted in the Harlem World magazine? What prompted you to do that?
Well, several things. One,
and I'm sorry, Regina. Before you say that, let me just, answer the question. The article, the name of the article is "Changing the Face of Cannabis Ownership: A 6-Point Plan for Black Equity." I know I mentioned it before. I just wanted to let people know exactly where we're headed and what you're talking about and what I referenced. I'm sorry.
Okay, so several years ago, a young sister by the name of Cassandra, who works for the Drug Policy Alliance, approached my daughter. They're both millennials, and talked about collaborating with the Harlem Business Alliance around cannabis and entrepreneurship. Because they do work nationally, the Drug Policy Alliance. And so I brought it to my board. They weren't feeling it, but we circled back.
Right.
There's a lot of discussion, pros and cons about cannabis.
Right.
And,
Oh, yeah.
So we circled back, and the board gave us permission to move forward with that. And so we had our first meetup, I would say it was last April or May, and then we had a summit at the National Black Theater. And what we were successful in doing was bringing Black people who have been operating in this space in silos, outside of the Harlem community,
right.
Attending conferences and meetups and traveling across the country to Colorado, LA, Massachusetts, and seeing what was being done in Maryland and those states, in various cities. And they oftentimes were the only Black people in the room. So when we had the summit at the National Black Theater,
not surprising.
They were thrilled to be in a space filled with Black people who were interested in learning how to get into the industry. Because previously they had been pushed back and resistance, and that's what they were met with from other segments of our community. So
Gotcha.
It was a space where people were about learning so that they can jump into this industry and make some money. So that, and following the summit, we've had meetups just about every month to continue to have dialogue and, educate people about the differences between CBD and THC and the different ways that you can jump into the market once it becomes legalized, the pitfalls. But the reason why, in answer to your question about why I felt the need to write the op-ed was because I kept seeing the wrong language, if you will, being utilized to describe people who were impacted by the war on drugs and here in the United States, the Rockefeller law. So I not only grew up in
I said scandalous. I threw my 2 cents in there.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I not only grew up in Harlem, in the projects, and I still live in Harlem. So I've seen the impact. I've lived through the impact.
Yep.
And so as far as I'm concerned, and what we do know to be a fact is that communities like Harlem have been the most harmed communities, Black communities, okay? So I didn't want us to sign on to legislation that spoke to MWBEs receiving benefits that should really be directed solely to communities most harmed, which are mainly black communities. So, and when I say that, what I'm saying is that minorities, MWBEs, that you know, all minorities. I mean, basically, that's a catchphrase for everyone but white men. So it includes white women, it includes Asians, it includes just people who weren't harmed. So,
no, I hear you.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, we have to write how strongly we feel about the need to center this discussion and be hyper-focused on the issues that affect the black community. The fact that for over a 40-year period, black bodies were used to populate upstate prisons and fuel their economies and a lot of industries, you know, around mass incarceration. And so knowing that and seeing the study that this brother Eddie Ellis did, it was called 7 Neighborhoods, and he was incarcerated for a period of time up in Greenhaven, and he and some other inmates, they formed a group, it's a think tank. And with this, because they noticed that a lot of people, a lot of men were from New York. I mean, the overwhelming majority of men in prison were from New York. And so they looked at it and they broke it down. They said, well, there's 7 neighborhoods, basically, that have been impacted. And so they went back and they revisited the study because they saw, you know, black men. And then later on, I mean, but this was during his period, saw black men coming from Westchester, Long Island, Buffalo, Syracuse, and other upstate communities as well. But so they looked at it. They did a study. Columbia even did a mapping project where what they did was with this map, they mapped. It's called a project, the $1 Million Block Project. So what they were able to
$1 Million Block Project.
Yes, and they were able to go to, you know, blocks in Brownsville, for example, and from certain blocks within that Brownsville community, they were able to identify the black men and the dollars associated with it, you know, and basically they were $1 million blocks. And remember, this is over a 40-year period. So, and I also felt the need to jump into the discussion because people weren't going back 40 years. I mean, the controller, Scott Stringer, he did a study, and it was over like the last 10 years. And, you know,
which doesn't give you the full perspective at all.
Exactly, you know, and so and when he had various tables, and I'm going through the study, and where's Central Harlem in this? Because I know people were one of the most impacted communities. And
like, wait a minute.
Way down on, you know, so I'm saying, wait a minute. No, we really have to look at some different metrics. We have to look at another study because this one is not really painting the picture of what happened here in this community. So that's why I felt the need to jump into the discussion to learn, you know, to read the legislation that the state legislators drafted, so had issues with that MWBE language and told them that doesn't work for black people because basically in New York City and in New York State, and I understand and know that they are working to improve the situation, but black people don't get hardly any contracts under MWBE procurement goals. We get the least amount of dollars. We get the least amount of contracts. I mean, the ones who benefit the most are white women, followed by Asians, followed by Latinos, and black people all the way at the bottom. And this has persisted for years. But when you go to these meetings and when you have these discussions, you see black people seated around the room primarily. So we're joining the discussion about the need to have goals for MWBEs, but the W and the other M's are the ones who are benefiting. So I said, okay, no. I'm tired.
Time to do something about that.
Yeah. That's right. We need to be hyper-focused on issues directly impacting black people because these other communities are speaking and looking out for themselves.
ourselves, right?
And
we're not in the mix to advocate for ourselves.
Not if we're advocating for everybody, which is what we typically do. You know, I mean, we that's what we've been doing for quite some time. We've been, even though it was our struggle, and basically it's black bodies, and, you know, without the civil rights movement, it was primarily black people. These other people have been able to benefit from these goals. So, you know, you even have Asian Americans, Asians coming to the United States and benefiting from diversity and inclusion initiatives and MWBE initiatives, right? So I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's right. But back to black people, right?
Well, let me stop you right there, Regina, and let our listeners know, because believe it or not, we're at the halfway point already. And just to let our listeners know, they're listening to the Danny Tisdale Show, and it's on the Harlem World Radio, and we're speaking to Regina Smith, who is the passionate, committed executive director of the Harlem Business Alliance, and we're talking about a 6-point plan for black equity in the cannabis business. And I'm sorry, Regina, I cut you off there. You were saying.
Okay, so I was saying that we talked about the fact that we don't need to get lost in language. Communities of color, people of color, MWBE, minorities, LGBTQ, and all the rest of that. We really need to focus on communities most harmed and keep the focus on that. So then the other thing that I saw in reading the governor's proposal and also the mayor's guide was that they weren't talking about real money being directed to our communities, and particularly day one. So when I read it, I saw that it was going to benefit legalization, adult use, marijuana legalization was going to benefit other communities. And so even though they talked about a community reinvestment fund that these medical marijuana companies, these huge mega $1 million companies that, can't wait for the legalization of marijuana to be able to expand their brand, open up dispensaries and Harlem.
Right, they're knocking on the door already, right.
And exactly. Because they view us as maybe they'll hire some people from the community, and you can meet that community hiring from the community requirement by hiring anybody, and our communities are being gentrified. So as you well know, for quite some time. So you don't necessarily have to hire these brothers and sisters who have been incarcerated, been arrested, been harmed by the war on drugs. You don't have to necessarily hire them. You can still meet that requirement. There's already
by hiring anybody. It doesn't necessarily have to be them, like you're saying.
Anybody who lives in the community or just moved here recently. So we said that first and foremost, you had to qualify to be an equity applicant. And so that meant that you had to be somebody who came from the community, who was either arrested, incarcerated, or a family member, or resided in the community before the year 2000. I really think it should be 1995, but be at least before 2000.
Come on. You got to go a little deeper than just 2000.
Right. That's frankly what I think. And so those are the individuals, the ones who have been most harmed, who need to receive the benefits, the financial benefits, because we're saying that day one, the state needs to allocate $500 million to fund incubators in each and every one of these communities. And originally they were talking about 7 incubators for the whole state. We need 7 down here in New York.
Big time.
And then when you add in Long Island, Westchester, and those upstate communities, that's a lot more. That's 15 at least, right? So, and then not only do you have to fund them, you need we're talking about seed money to open up these businesses within the area. Okay, so that's going to cost money. We also talk about the fact that businesses, that our communities need to be protected, so that only businesses owned by equity applicants are able to open up within our communities. So our communities become protected from those outside cannabis companies from out of New York that are dying to come in and again, just put us in a position of being consumers, which is, typically,
right.
rule that we
which is what happens. Right.
Yeah, and so, no, we don't want to see that happen. We want to open up these businesses within Harlem, Brownsville, Bed-Stuy, those communities.
Communities like Harlem.
Right, exactly. That have been harmed, okay,
right.
the documented, So we're saying that, and also there should be like a 3-year leveling period, which means give us 3 years to go and start and sustain and grow these businesses. So before you allow everybody else to go and jump into, into the market.
Most definitely. And Regina, let me ask you, because I could just sit and listen to you talk about the issue, and I'd be happy. But hopefully somewhere down the line I can ask you to be back on the show, because I have a feeling we're just really maybe we're touching the surface, because this is a really deep dive conversation. So I just want to ask about the 6-point plan, because now, we don't have enough time to go over each point. But I have a feeling that the 6-point plan is addressing the issues that you're talking about.
Oh, most definitely, and I've discussed some of the points already. The equity applicant,
right.
$500 million day one, the community reinvestment fund, which most advocates support. But the problem with that is that these cannabis companies that are already in and will be operating, will expand their reach in their market. They would have to contribute a portion of their net profits, and I say it should be a portion of their gross profits, because they can expense most of their profits, right? So, well,
all that is it's an investment back into the community. It's not like I'm just giving money away. It's an investment in the consumer so that the consumers can consume more. So it's a cycle where everybody wins.
Yeah, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help people who want to start their businesses and be able to compete in this city.
Gotcha.
So that's why we're saying that, that fund is good. We definitely think that should happen, but those funds are going to be deposited, let's say, over the next year, a year or two out. That's why we say that there should be some funds on day one, devoted to these equity incubators and creating these black businesses. Okay.
So let me ask you, Cuomo just, I read the other day, maybe yesterday, pulled, let me get the right wording here, but something along the lines that Cuomo has taken the cannabis out of the New York state budget. Is that, did I twist that, or did I get that right?
No, I mean, he did say that, but they're still talking. They're still negotiating. Okay. They're still trying to see whether or not they can make it happen. Yeah, no, no. So,
that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand that.
Well, I mean, he's pushing for his plan, okay? And our legislators, are pushing for their plan. And so what we would hate to see come out of this is that the huge mega $1 million cannabis companies come in here and are able to monopolize the market.
Mm-hmm. Give a little. Well, we know they don't they don't donate their money to elected officials or businesses. So I hear what you're saying. They invest their money along the line.
And they have. I mean, they've been lobbying and they've been making political contributions. That's been written about. So that's a fact. And of course, the most important thing really is that there needs to be automatic expungement for anyone who is convicted of a marijuana conviction. And we say that they shouldn't be excluded from either owning businesses, licenses, and let's take it a step further, anybody who has been has a nonviolent conviction should not be prohibited from opening up a cannabis-related business or getting a license or working in the industry. So that's key. I mean, criminal justice reform is critical. You know, the bail system. I mean, it's just diabolical, really. When you look at the way the system has been designed, basically to move again black bodies from our communities and populate these upstate communities.
Right.
So,
that is so true, Regina, because, some of our listeners might say, well, why is this a black issue? Why is this a black equity issue? And I like to give the example of during Stop and Frisk back in the day, we had an intern, and he told me that on average he was stopped, and they would check him for marijuana 46 times a month just to see if he had a joint on him. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He's walking down the street, going to class, coming to work with us, and they just stop him.
Exactly.
Scandalous.
Scandalous. And that was under the Bloomberg administration, and he didn't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Don't get me started, Regina.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Ooh.
It's just like, no.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
come on.
No, it's been diabolical. Really, it really has. You know, I mean, locking up people for jumping the turnstile. Really, $2, $2.75, locking people up for that. Really.
Right.
So
the business of crime. So I wanted to ask you, because here we are at the last 2 minutes, almost a minute, 2 minutes and a half, and I've of course got about 50 questions for you. But I wanted to kind of, what can those listening, whether they're in Harlem, the United States, or around the world, how can they get involved? What would you suggest them as some first steps to get involved? Because it sounds like there's going to be other steps down the road that plays to be called. What can listeners do to get involved, Regina?
I mean, there's they can go to the Drug Policy. They can go to the Drug Policy Alliance website. I mean, there's a ton of information there, and then and then that will lead to other publications and. So you need to become informed. You need, people really need to pay attention, read their papers to find out what's going on in their cities. Hemp is legalized in a lot of states, and that's a great opportunity for black people to get into the business. I remember reading an article about this man who was going to start this hemp business, hemp-infused beauty products, right, for African-American women. So I looked at it and I looked him up. It was a white man who was planning to create this business to market these products to black women, and I was like, "See, this is so." People can start working in the hemp space. Yeah, people can start working in the hemp space now. They can.
And Regina, we're at that 1 minute mark and change, and I know that. Let me just say real quickly. I know that my friend E2 Evans is doing the same thing. Brother in Harlem, who's a designer, and we're at that last. I can't believe we're at the last minute. And so I'm going to ask you 2 questions for you to answer within that minute, Regina. And one, what is your favorite place in Harlem? And last, can you give either website or social media contacts where our listeners can get involved, can reach to HBA to find out more information?
Okay, so I like Charles Chicken and Sylvia's.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, you're making me hungry. Why you do that? All right. Sorry.
Okay, and then our website is www.hbany.org, and that's short for Harlem Business Alliance New York.org. So people can come to our website, see what we do.
Thank you, Regina, and you are doing incredible work, and you have always been doing incredible work, and I can't believe it's taken almost 2 decades for us to have this conversation, but you, Regina, are doing great work, and I can't think of anyone I would love more than having you on to speak Women's History Month on Harlem World Radio, the Danny Tisdale Show. Thank you, Regina Smith.
Thank you.
HBA.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.